Mega Man 1 is hard. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. Early on in my channel's life, I decided I would make a Mario Party video and ended up making 12 videos on the whole series because I didn't feel like it was right to speed through it all in one video. Then, it was smooth for a bit. I covered the early Mario, Sonic, and Donkey Kong games and was enjoying myself since they didn't take too much time or energy. Then I decided to play Sonic Frontiers and got sucked into a Sonic wormhole, where I now have a retrospective playlist of 14 3D Sonic videos collectively adding up to like 12 or 13 hours of YouTube footage. I decided I was going to take it easy. Mega Man is a series of short games that should be easy to blow through. It's an iconic franchise, and it's one I've always wanted to give a deep look into. I have very limited experience with the series, and don't know much about it. I've played the mainline OG and X games one time over the span of a week or two back in 2017 and 18. And I think I played Zero, but I can't remember. Oh, and I also played the first Battle Network game on GBA when it first came out, and I was in like 6th grade, I think. So I figured I'd quickly run through the OG games, and maybe the X games, and create 9 or 10 videos and 3 months of YouTube content so that I could focus on my next big project. Well, what I didn't realize, until after I started doing my initial research, was that this series has dozens of games. And unlike pretty much every other classic series I've ever played, there's no clear distinction as to which games are required and which ones aren't by the Mega Man community. Like in the Mario and Sonic world, you can find a good chunk of people recommending remakes and ports as a definitive experience of specific games. But Mega Man fans are like, F you and play everything, and play it the way it was intended to be played in the 80s, or you're not actually playing Mega Man. I jumped on a Discord chat and asked if I could just play the Wily Wars instead of the first 3 games. You know, thinking it was the same concept as playing Mario All-Stars instead of the NES versions of those games. And good God, I still have nightmares over some of the threats that were made to me for suggesting such an insane thought. And the worst part is, they didn't even suggest I stick with the original releases. No, they suggested I play both. What? Which other series does this? And this is just one example. As I kept digging through the rabbit hole, which by the way is a terrible rabbit hole to dig into just before going to bed on a work night, because you'll suddenly realize it's 3 AM and trying to understand why Mega Man 3 for PC is not the same as Mega Man 3, which is also not the same game as Mega Man 3. I decided I had to make a list, because the internet doesn't have a dang list. Making the list was the next mistake I made, because what I thought was going to be 10 OG games plus 2 or 3 additional side games ended up being a frickin' family tree of inbreeding, where the branches go in and out of one another, and somehow, at the end of one of the branches is a soccer game. I couldn't make sense of it, and I still can't. So screw it. I'm playing every game. And I'm playing them all in release order. The only alternative I can do is to hire a Mega Man advisor to guide me through the journey, but I'm barely cracking enough in ad revenue to pay for my Premiere Pro subscription right now. No more research, no more questions, no more 3 AM rabbit holes. By the time I finish figuring out which games I should consider worth covering as mainline Mega Man games, I could probably have finished half the series. Forget using this as a stopping point before I get to my next big project. This is my next big project. I'm playing the OG titles, spin-offs, X, Zero, ZX, Legends, all of it. Well, almost all of it. I'm not gonna do the RPGs yet, so Battle Network and Star Force will have to wait for another time. That's just for my own sanity. And I'm not doing any Japanese games either. Except maybe Rockman and Forte because, oh yeah, the rabbit hole taught me it was a better option to play than Mega Man and Bass because of the screen crunch. There might be some mobile stuff I gloss over, some games I might not play but I'll just mention it in passing. Either way, this should be a quick and easy list of like 35-ish games, and oh my god, my list has 50 games. 58 to be exact. Well, minus 9 because those are the mobile ports, so I might not play those. Thankfully, I decided to spend even more time on this list and check howlongtobeat.com and learned that many of these games cap off in like an hour or two, so that's not too big of a deal. But still, the website predicts like 185 hours of game time, but I'm sure they're overestimating it. Anyway, so take all of what I said with a grain of salt because it's a comprehensive list that's subject to change as time goes on. I'm going to aim to release a video for each year starting with 1987, and I'll veer off that path as necessary as I proceed. Like, Wily Wars released in 1994, but I'm not going to go through in the same video as I do Mega Man X2, for example. Also, my list was constructed by a Mega Man amateur, so there's a good chance that as I go on and learn more about the series, I knock off a few games or add some games that I didn't include. Either way, by the time I get through this, I'll have to change my name from Nintendine to Megadine. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Today's video will cover the inaugural game in the series, released in the year of 1987, the year Reagan asked Mr. Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall. We'll go through this series one game at a time, so I don't stress myself out. Folks, welcome to Mega Man 1. Oh god, I never should have done this. I should have never thought this would be a good idea. Is this game really this frickin' hard? How do you guys play this game without a rewind button? My goodness. From my understanding, Mega Man 1 was not all that popular and didn't sell well. It was a surprise to many that it even managed to get a sequel because of how bad it did. I've heard people claim it's because of the box art, but I don't know how much of an effect this ugly work of art actually had on the sales, since many NEX box arts were weird and I'm not sure if all of the weird ones had terrible sales. Usually, if a game was good, everyone bought it. I feel like Mega Man 1's is just memed because Mega Man is a popular series and it's an ugly, like really ugly box art, but I could be wrong. However, I've seen plenty of arguments claiming the poor sales were due to the game's difficulty, and I could totally see that being a thing. Word spreads quickly, and given how much easier Mega Man 2 was and how well that game sold, I think I lean towards the difficulty affecting sales arguments. I also might have recency bias because Mega Man 1 destroyed me. Seriously, I don't remember it being this hard when I first played it. Back in 2017, I ran through Sonic mobile ports on my Android phone, and then noticed Mega Man games were available on there as well. So I downloaded the 6 of them and experienced the Mega Man series for the first time, with touchscreen glory and all. Aside from that, like I said, I enjoyed the Battle Network game as a kid, and watching the anime on Kids WB. I'm thinking when I played the mobile Mega Man games, I must have just looked up guides as to the best order to play the bosses because I remember flying through those games. I think I recall a Reddit post back then hinting that Mega Man's jump was better in those ports, so it might have made the games easier? I don't know, and I don't remember. I might go over the mobile ports in a future video, but I thought it'd be worth pointing out that I did play the first Mega Man on Android back then. As far as the story goes, well, if a game doesn't explicitly go through a story, I don't really care about it. Not because I think it's irrelevant, but because the reality is if I'm playing a game where the story was an afterthought, then I don't really feel like it's right to put it on the forefront and discuss the lore too much. I played through the game without looking up the story, but for the sake of this video, I could do a quick summary. The game is set in a future where advanced robots are part of daily life, designed to serve humanity. However, the brilliant scientist, Dr. Thomas Light's former colleague, Dr. Albert Wily, goes rogue, reprogramming Dr. Light's 6 industrial robots to wreak havoc on the world. Realizing the danger posed by Wily's actions, Dr. Light modifies his household assistant robot, Rock, into a combat robot named Mega Man. Mega Man sets out on a mission to stop Wily's robots, each of which has been reprogrammed for nefarious purposes. Mega Man must defeat each of these robot masters in their respective stages before confronting Dr. Wily himself. TLDR, 6 main stages, 6 main robots, and an endgame. Alright, let's get to the juicy part. I decided I'd run through this game without looking up the weakness order. The only thing I could remember was Bomb Man being everyone's first stage to go to, so I went with that. For the uninitiated, Mega Man games usually have 8 boss robots you have to defeat. This game I think is the only one with 6, but I could be wrong. Anyway, you can play through the stages to defeat the bosses in whatever order you like. Every boss you defeat allows you to gain their weapon, and every boss has a weakness against another boss's weapon. But it's not explicitly stated as to what the weaknesses are. Which means players without a guide are meant to run through stages and make it to a boss and experiment with one of the special weapons to see if it knocks it down, or resort to fighting against the boss with your default pea shooter and hope it's enough to take them down. The catch is, if you make it to a boss and you can't defeat it, you basically ran through the whole stage for nothing, and now you have to pick a different stage to play through and hope you can defeat the boss there. It's a very interesting system and one that allows you to experiment with multiple paths or decide your own difficulty in some sense. It's kind of brilliant. I've heard of people who only play through these games with a pea shooter, as they feel the special weapons take away the fun and challenge of the game. And I've seen other people say the only way to really enjoy this game is to go through its intended weakness order, otherwise it drags on too long and isn't enjoyable. I think I land somewhere in the middle. I personally played through this game twice for this video. One time was for my first playthrough. It's the one you're seeing footage of. I kinda tried to pick the correct order, but I wasn't very successful at it. There was only one instance, however, where I got to a boss and couldn't defeat them and had to redo the level at the end. And honestly, when I redid that level, it was way more enjoyable because I had already learned the challenges. Due to this being an NES game, it was designed in a manner that would have you run through multiple screens. In the case of Mega Man 1, the amount of screens averaged to around 22 or 23 per stage, and they offered various challenges that you had to overcome to get through. Those challenges usually just being some moderate to difficult enemies, but some screens also just had death spikes or bottomless pits or a random puzzle. These screens are the meat and potatoes of this game, and how enjoyable a stage is completely contingent on how hard the challenges in these screens are. And it's not that I'm against a challenge. My issue is some of these challenges are totally unreasonable and flat out unfair. Keep in mind you have to run through these stages and boss fights in 3 lives, aside from the rare occasion that you run into a 1-up. Fortunately, if you lose a life, you're usually not sent too far back and your health is regenerated. And if you get a game over, you're starting fresh from the beginning of the stage. There may or may not have been an occasion where I started a stage, realized I was on my last life, so I gladly got myself killed so I could restart the stage with all my lives. The only punishment is your score restarts, but the scores, like many games of this era, were irrelevant. I'm actually glad the game never sends you back to the title screen. I thought this was only the case because I was playing the Legacy Collection, but it turns out pretty much all of the mainline games give you unlimited continues. Mega Man 1 does lack a save or even a password feature, so if you couldn't beat the game in one sitting, you were out of luck. But in Legacy Collection, you do have save states, so it solves that issue. But anyway, it's a very short game. I got through it in like 2 hours on my first run, and almost half the time on my second run. There's also the rewind feature in the Legacy Collection, which I avoided using unless I was specifically trying to experiment on something for the sake of footage. But honestly, at least the way I view this game, I think it's very much beatable. While yes, the rewind feature is cheap in many ways, and due to the way gaming has evolved, I'm not totally against the use of the rewind feature. If you use it responsibly, that is. If you're using it to cheese through a challenge, then I think it can effectively ruin the game. At least it would ruin the game for me, but to each their own. But I think someone that uses it to avoid having to run through the stage again from the start, effectively giving themselves unlimited lives, I think I'm sort of okay with that. I know many of you would consider that blasphemy, but for me the only thing it really changes is the amount of time you spend on the stages. Since when you rewind, you're not really getting any health back beyond what you had at the start of each screen. And with where I am in my life, and where I think the gaming community as a whole is, we just don't need to pad out games with these archaic designs. There's still very much a challenge with Mega Man 1 as long as you're not using the save states or rewind feature to refill your health or dodge an attack or whatever. But like I said, I avoided using the rewind feature and I'll continue to do so as I continue these videos. Anyway, you'll eventually get used to my tangents and maybe even grow to love them. Like I said earlier, I had to redo one of the stages because I didn't have the correct weapon, and I couldn't defeat the robot boss. When I replayed the level, I found it a lot more enjoyable though. I still found the replay difficult, but it was less experimental and more of a test of what I've learned before. It's a feeling that I largely associated with the Sonic games I played. The first playthrough is to learn the stage, and the second playthrough is to test yourself. I really wanted to start my script shortly after finishing the game, but something kind of felt off. I felt like I didn't really play the game. After all I could think about was how short and brutally difficult the game was. So I decided to give it another go. No capture card, and I played it handheld while laying on the couch rather than on my desk. I got in the zone. And dude, I loved my second playthrough. I loved it so much I actually regretted not recording the second session. I still lost a bunch of lives and got myself a game over or two, but this time around, when I saw an enemy, I knew what I was meant to do. I knew which ones to avoid, which ones I could defeat easily, and which ones I didn't have to waste ammo on. And most importantly, I knew how to Mega Man. I knew how Mega Man felt to control. From my understanding, this gets fixed in the next game, but Mega Man is super slippery in this title, which is terrible because there are many fine margins for challenges you have to overcome over death pits. I actually figured out that in instances where I had to be accurate, it was easier to try and platform across those sections quicker rather than slow down to think, which made them a lot more enjoyable because I felt like I was at home in the Mushroom Kingdom with all the confidence in my ability to hop around on a block. I was in the zone. Funnily enough, the robot bosses were the most underwhelming parts of my second playthrough because I knew the order now. I knew how to make sure I'd defeat them with ease, or at least more ease than before. And even after I got through the 6 stages, I found Wily's endgame to be much more bearable the second time around. Now make no mistake, I have to reiterate, even on the second playthrough, this game destroyed me. It almost made me rage quit more than once. But regardless, the second time around was a much better experience than the first. Now, with all that out of the way, let's go through the actual stages and take a closer look at the challenges I endured while playing through these games. Pretty much the only thing I remembered about the bosses and their weakness order is that you're supposed to start with Bomb Man, so I did just that. His stage is pretty easy, but it did take me a few minutes to get used to the fact that Mega Man can only fire in one direction. And you can't crouch, and he's a bit heavy and slippery. So it did offer a bit of an unintentional challenge to the early game. You go through a long stretch and deal with various quick enemies that jump around in some pits that shoot up these little bullets that are likely to make you lose a few bars of health early on. Or, I guess in my case, about a quarter of my health. You'd think these stages would start slow, but no. As you move on, you run into another section that has you shooting some enemies while going up a ladder and offers you health pickups. So the game seems to be a bit forgiving until you get to the next section and fight this green dude with a shield. Which, googling tells me his name is Sniper Joe. You can't shoot him when his shields are up, you have to dodge his bullets, which meant in my case I was able to get through him but I was back down in health again. The next section was pretty challenging with these exploding bullets that you had to shoot while they were still pretty far away from you so you don't take any damage. All the while dodging some other enemies stuck to the wall, shooting you from far, as you're trying to jump over bottomless pits. The knockback in this game is pretty strong, so areas like this are very likely to lead to a death or two. When you get past that section, you'll find these quick moving discs sliding around that you can't really defeat with a pea shooter, so it's just a matter of finding a way to get past them without losing health. At this point, I only had a quarter health remaining. Luckily, the next screen was a bit easier, but I still lost a bit of health. Going to the next section, oh man, platforming over spikes and flying little shells that open up and shoot you. This section was hard. I barely got past it. With one hit remaining, the next screen had a 1-up protected by a Sniper Joe, but I didn't even bother since I knew I'd lose a life just trying to get it. And the following area had another Sniper Joe, but he was elevated so I was able to take my time and defeat him pretty easily. Albeit while being very cautious and conservative. What followed was a challenge that involved going down a ladder and avoiding these weird looking eye monsters. I was surprised I was able to get through them despite only having 1 health bar remaining. But after that, I landed in Bomb Man's room, and he killed me in a split second. This time, when I got down there, I was able to take him down with my pea shooter, with relative ease despite taking a ton of damage. Regardless, with Bomb Man complete, it was time to move on. For some reason, I chose to go to Iceman next. I guess I figured bombs blow up ice? I don't know. But anyway, I went through the stage mostly using my pea shooter. The early part has you face off against enemies that require either 2 hits or a headshot to defeat. Followed by a section with penguins flying at you and those slippery discs that you had to avoid on the ground again. I barely made it through the section and thankfully was able to replenish a quarter of my health. This next area was my first encounter with the disappearing blocks. The worst part of this was trying to avoid the slippery disc at the bottom, not the actual challenge with the blocks. I lost a life and I went at it again. I don't know if these disappearing blocks are equally as annoying in the upcoming games, but they were annoying here. After you get through the first challenge, you have to do it again in the next room too, which is doubly annoying. It's all about timing though, and if you defeat the slippery disc with a bomb, you can basically keep trying until you succeed. It took me quite a few minutes, but I eventually got it. The thing is, it's not just about being quick, you have to know where to jump, before a block even shows up. And like I said, Mega Man is very slippery in this game, so it's much easier said than done. Your reward for getting through this challenge is another hard as heck section that I lost a life while getting through, but I managed to overcome it and replenish my health. And then I found this jumping robot that I thought I could beat, but after losing half my health, I noped the heck out of there, blasted my way through penguins in a tunnel, and got to Iceman. Threw my bomb at him, saw it did nothing, tried to fight again with a pea shooter while narrowly dodging ice bullets and spamming pea shooters, and after defeating him I died because he had a stray bullet out. So I guess that's a thing. Anyway, on the next life I did get through Iceman, so naturally it was time to go against Fireman. I got through some of the earlier challenges with my pea shooter. On my first playthrough it took me a while to realize I could freeze the rising fire torches, so I just run through them and take a hit and continue and hope for some health pickups. And at the end of the fire challenges I found 3 health pickups waiting for me, so that was nice. The next room had more fire for me to dodge and take a hit and move on. Followed by another challenge, only this time it was over death pits. When I made it out of this room, I got to this area and I tried to use the ice beam to freeze these flames, but I swear nothing was working. I ended up deciding I just had to lose health and get through the area. And my reward was a room with narrow halls with kamikaze bullets and sliding discs. So I died. And I got a game over. Started the stage over. Did much better this time, to be honest. I actually used the ice beam to help me through some of the challenges, which was nice. Actually, I was surprised at how much easier it was the second time around. When I got to this room, this time I just accepted I'd be losing health and swung through it quickly. And this time when I got to the sliding discs, I utilized the fact that I could freeze them to get past them. And then I sort of just hightailed it forward to the final area before the boss, where I took down screws in the ceiling and advanced and showed up to Flame Man with 1 hit. I gladly took the L and came back a second time with a lot more health. Spammed the ice beam and defeated him with ease. Funny thing is, as I wrote the script and looked back at my footage, I was seeing how bad I was on my first playthrough. I didn't realize it was that bad because it had been a few days since I played it. And in between that I had my second playthrough that was a lot more enjoyable. But I guess that's just how someone learns how to love a game. After beating Fireman, I decided to go for Electman. This was the first stage I started with actual confidence. I felt like I had learned how to play. I jumped in, the music started. For whatever reason, this music triggered memories in me. I don't know if it was the main theme of Mega Man 1, but it felt very familiar. I was bobbing my head, equipping my newfound fire attack, climbing up ladders, killing enemies, making it through invisible box challenges, learning how close to the edge I could get without falling and leaping up while dodging lightning attacks, figuring out how to platform quickly around intimidating blocks in the sky, climbing more ladders, defeating more enemies, jamming, feeling good, loving every moment. I was even able to defeat the sliding discs that I couldn't handle prior. I had full health, passed by another dumb jumping robot so I could lose a quarter of that, easily got through the final ladder climb. Hello, Electman. I'm dead. Okay, he's not weak against fire. Let's try the bomb. Up the ladder, dodge the lightning, full health, the bomb did nothing. Took out the ice, it literally did nothing. Took out the pea shooter, game over, stage select. Electman is going to have to wait his turn because I was clearly not equipped enough to handle him. So I decided to take a stab at Cutman. Pun intended. Found these creepy flying smiling things and some shells on a wall that shoot bullets. Climbed a bunch of ladders and dodged a bunch of bullets. Had a good amount of health, even with the hits I took. I just kept moving forward. The fire attack was my friend, but I switched to the pea shooter to help me out a bit. I actually just started to brute force my way through a lot of these sections. But I didn't dare go after the jumping robot guy because I knew I didn't stand a chance against him. I ran through the final tunnel, made it to Cutman, shot a few flames at him, and with that, I was able to defeat him. I figured I'd go for Gutsman next because I wasn't mentally ready to take a chance and go after Electman. Gutsman stages have one real challenge, and it's these dumb platforms that psych you out and cause you to fall. And it's not even the platforming that's difficult, it's Mega Man's control. After that area, you face a few flying guys and some construction workers. The next few screens, I just quickly dropped through and once again avoided a fight with a jumping robot. When I got to Gutsman, I tried the bomb, and it worked out perfectly. Albeit I still had one hit left by the time I defeated him. But still, success. Electman round 2. Oh, I'm actually glad I lost to Electman the first time around because this time I had Gutsman's move and was allowed to get the magnet beam, which you literally need at the end of the game. I'd have been so pissed if I didn't pick it up and got there and had to start over. There's literally no indication that it's required. It's the only item that's like this in the whole game. And I coincidentally picked it up. Anyway, I figured I'd give Cutman's attack a shot at this point since I used a process of elimination to take out most other options. It was still a really hard fight, but it was doable. And with the defeat of Electman, the final robot, it was time to go through the endgame. Of course, on my second playthrough, this was much easier. I now knew the order: Bomb Man, Gutsman, Cutman, Electman, Iceman, and Fireman. Not only did the order help with defeating the bosses, but Bomb, Guts, and Cut were by far the easiest stages for me. And when I defeated Electman with Cutman and got the lightning strike attack, it made the remainder of the game so much more doable. I think it's such a cool and revolutionary aspect of this game, and it's no wonder it's loved to this day. Many games offer you a chance to play games in different orders, but the way this game allows you the opportunity to play the stages in whatever order you want is very cool. It gives me the same sense of pleasure a Metroid game does, where I go through one area of the map, get a specific power-up that allows me to explore a different area. It's not really the same exact thing, but the feeling I get, the mystery behind figuring out what the right order is and backtracking through a stage you couldn't beat because you didn't have the right weapon was nice. I do wonder if in future games, every boss would just be beatable with a pea shooter. Because in the case of Mega Man 1, I don't think that's at all the case. And I think in some regard, I was lucky to only have to leave a stage once and redo it. But anyway, the music in Wily's first stage definitely struck a nostalgic note with me. I know I've heard it. I have no idea from where. Maybe in YouTube videos? I don't know. The first portion, I dodged a bunch of jumping robots, used Gutsman ability and the ice beam to get through an area, did more tiptoe jumping to regain health, used fire to defeat some discs, blasted my way through kamikaze bullets, used the magnet beam to help me through the area with these flying bullets shooting platforms, and then got through the next area that required the magnet beam with ease before making it to the devil. And oh yeah, I just remembered there's a pause trick with this game with the electric attack! I actually had totally forgotten about this. I haven't watched a Mega Man review in a very long time, but I 100% remember having to use this trick to beat the game when I played on the mobile port. I remember now. You shoot the electric beam and quickly pause and unpause and it's all a piece of cake. And of course, I have to make the mandatory lie that everyone makes and claim that when I was younger, I beat the Yellow Devil before so now I can play the game and use the pause trick. It's sort of a prerequisite for anybody talking about this game. You're all liars. Nobody beats this thing without the pause trick. I have no shame. This was part of the original game, and all you purists can't tell me it's not the correct way to defeat the game. Yellow Devil was an easy fight. So easy, I used the rewind feature and I did it again. What a treat. The next Wily stage takes place on narrow platforms in the sky, dodging smiling dudes, followed by a quick fight against Cutman that you can make easy work with using the fire beam, since there are no Gutsman blocks you can launch at him. After that, you go through another sky section, and dodge some projectiles and face off against Electman. I equipped the cut attack so fast for this guy it's not even funny. One more sky section with projectiles everywhere. I saw one up, and I had to grab that because I was at one piece of health left, so I knew I wouldn't last. Followed by a quick section with those creepy eyes that I equipped my fire suit to defeat. Went through a few more quick challenges, and the next fight is against yourself. I quickly died, so I came back with full health and tried again. Easy fight, just spam the pea shooter. Even if you don't move, you'll only lose like half your health. But it is a nice spectacle, I'll give it that much. The next area I just kinda quickly dropped through and hoped that I wouldn't lose too much health. And I didn't. Plus in the following area, items and health just kept getting dropped, so that was easy. And then you get to a fight with this machine in a bubble thing. Honestly, this thing killed me. I had to look up how to beat it. But then the tip that I found online recommended not using the blocks against it on the first 3 hits, making it much easier. The problem is, when I came back to life, those blocks didn't come back with me. I thought I was out of luck. But it turns out just a bunch of pea shooter mashing does the trick as long as you can dodge a few of its shots. Next stage, lots of dodging here, but otherwise not too crazy of a challenge. I really liked all of the Wily stages in that they were straightforward challenges that allowed you to flex all of the weapons you gained through the playthrough. And once again, on my second playthrough, they were much more enjoyable because I actually knew what I was doing and what I was capable of during a lot of them. But honestly, even on my first playthrough, the stages felt like challenges I had experienced earlier on in the game, but with the game respecting me just that little bit more to keep me on my toes. And it was also nice enough to give me this strange item that replenished all of my health and weapons before getting to the final bit of boss fights. First up was Bomb Man. I took care of him with some flame shots pretty easily. Next, Flame Man. I bought out the ice and cooled him down. And next up was Iceman, and I only had a little bit of health left. So I pause tricked him straight to hell. And finally, Gutsman. I got him with a few bombs and it was all done. And guess what? Dr. Wily was easy too, because pause trick. I'm not even mad. Okay, real talk, on the second playthrough I only used the pause trick on the Yellow Devil, but on this first playthrough I was exhausted and beat it up so badly with 0 lives, so I caved in and used it on Iceman and Dr. Wily because I sure as hell was not going to get a game over and restart the level. The Dr. Wily fight is actually still pretty easy if you show up with a decent amount of health. Much like everything else in this game, on the first playthrough it's very hard, but as you play through the game and learn the ins and outs of how Mega Man controls, which attacks to use against which enemies, and how to get through repeated platforming challenges, you find a game that allows you the chance to test yourself and test your strength in gaming. I know this game isn't really all that revered in the grand scheme of things. I think it suffers from the same first game in the franchise syndrome that many other games suffer from. I can easily compare this to Mario Party. Nobody looks back at the first game as fondly because of how brutal it was, but the foundations that game set created a chain of games after it that will not soon be forgotten. Many people have nostalgia for Mario Party 2, citing it as the first good game in the series because it kept the 90% good from Mario Party 1 and removed the 10% brutal. I think the Mega Man series has a similar experience, because as you all likely already know, many people still say the second game is the best one in the series. But don't forget that Mega Man 1 still has 90% that's good. It's a hard game, yes, especially on your first playthrough. But keep in mind, not only was it my first time playing this game since 2017, it was my first time playing any Mega Man game in that time frame. So a lot more of the rust that comes with learning or relearning how to play a game existed than it probably should have. In today's age, I recommend playing Mega Man 1 after playing one of the sequels. I think it'd feel like a hard mode at that point. Like I said, the second time around I beat the game within an hour, and it wasn't just because I learned the stages. It's because I learned to Mega Man. And I have to imagine that similar benefit was seen for many back in the 80s, where they learned to Mega Man with the first game, and really started to rock the Mega Man in the sequel. But we'll get to that next time. As always, thanks for watching. Dean, out.